Anyways, hi Elise.
Hi, Mike.
How are you doing? How are you enjoying Boulder?
I'm really enjoying it. It's a good time here. Love hanging out in your living room, sleeping on your floor.
Yeah, I know we need a bigger place so we can count for more people. We've definitely been having 15 people in here, and I think pretty sure it's a fire hazard. So.
Oh, please. 15 people are not sleeping here, though. And look, you got 2 doors out, so you're good. No fire hazard.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Not yet. So, what have you been doing in Boulder?
Some hikes going out. It's been rainy today, so we went to breakfast and such. The weather's been pretty okay for most of the week, so happy about that.
Yeah, no,
do some adventuring.
You've been doing visiting some hot spots in Boulder.
Mm-hmm. We went to Foolish Craig's.
Mm-hmm.
A small plug here for free for them.
Mm-hmm.
It was delicious.
Yeah.
What was that one thing? What was the one thing that you had, John? Rum caramel crepe from the side gallery over here.
Mm-hmm.
10 out of 10 would recommend.
I'm glad you're enjoying Boulder. It's been a little rainy this week, so you caught us in a little bit of a downspout here, but
Always here in the rain.
Hopefully the sun will come back out.
Yep.
So, anyways, what have you been up to?
Just schooling,
Cool.
That's basically it.
Cool.
Schooling, working in schools, going to school. Good times.
Yeah. So right now you're pursuing teaching.
Mm-hmm. That is what I am doing. Secondary education with a major in biology and minors in chemistry, language, literature, and writing.
Mm-hmm. Why teaching?
I kind of always pretended I was a teacher. I would always play teacher as a kid. In like 3rd and 4th grade, I would pretend to be my 3rd and 4th grade teacher, and I would do all the things she would do. She had a system where she would give kids like stars and warnings, and I pretended I also had 25 students and would pick their names out of a little cup, and that's what I would do with my free time when I was little.
So you would pretend to be a teacher?
Mm-hmm.
Like when
I would play school.
You would play school?
I would play school, and I would be the teacher.
Okay. So if you're the teacher, what subject would you teach?
In elementary school, probably just whatever we were learning, because there's no really like divided subjects. So I would just pretend, be like, we learned about commas today. I'm gonna do commas. But see, I would make all my little study tools.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really how I kind of was learning too, was pretending to be the teacher, and I would learn about it by pretending to do that.
Yeah. So you always just liked working with kids and sort of teaching them?
I did always work with kids. Yep. I would always, even like in VBS, I would be like one of the leader kids or whatever, or VBS is Vacation Bible School for those of you who are not growing up in the church. Mm-hmm. And then once I got old enough, I would kind of be like mommy's helper for these kids that I would walk to school with because they were younger than me. So I think in like 5th grade, the kids were in 1st grade, kindergarten, or younger because they had a little sister. And I would the mom cleaned, I would babysit. So it's mommy's helper. It's not really babysitting because she's there. Mm-hmm. And then I worked in a nursery from like 7th, like at church nursery. So there's adults there. Don't worry. It wasn't the only one. I would take care of all the little kids and stuff. That was middle school. Once I got to high school, I think I got more interested in science.
Okay.
And that's where all the science, like biology and chemistry and stuff, I was like, I really like that. And I finally figured out I was kind of smart. Like before that, I didn't really care about school. Mm-hmm. So as much as I was like playing school and stuff, I wasn't like, I need to do good. Like I want to do good. I want to learn. I was just learning for fun, for funsies.
Yeah. So you sort of found like a subject that you really gravitated towards, and you wanted to invest more of your time and energy into.
Yep, and that was science. And then I think it was like 8th grade where I really started to care about school, like grades and stuff. I was like, oh, like maybe I can, like I felt good when I felt smart. I was like, oh, okay. And even though like I still wasn't good at school yet, because I got 1 year ahead of math. And from between 7th grade and 8th grade, I skipped 8th grade math.
Okay.
But when I took the test, my math teacher, she said, oh, like you can go forward, you got a good enough score, but I wouldn't recommend it. And I was like, oh man, I'll just do it. I'll do it. And yes, I did struggle in math for the next 3 years. And then AP calculus, I finally got it. That was my senior year of high school. I was like, oh, this all makes sense. But that's kind of when all the math subjects kind of came together, because you learn like geometry, you learn algebra, you learn trig, and they all seem like very separate. And then AP calculus, they all came together. And I was like, whoa. But here's the other thing. I also hung out with a lot of friends who were like also very academically driven. So we had a summer study group to study geophysical science. So that was the 9th grade science. So this was the other thing that kind of set up my whole high school experience. We ended up just reading the textbook for the class and testing out. And I say those two things really opened up my high school schedule to do whatever I wanted, basically. So it wasn't like the regular high school path, because I was ahead in 2 of like the main courses, and you only had to take 2 credits of science, or 3 credits. So I needed 2 more because I got a credit from geophysical science from testing out. So then I got to take more of like the fun science classes, and I think that really got me more interested in it too, because I was like, I can do as I please. I don't have to sign up for these classes because I now have this freedom because I tested out. So if you guys want more freedom in your schedules, maybe do some testing out early on if you can't.
Yeah, so it definitely sounded like, as you said, like you had surrounded with a lot of people that were really driven academically throughout those grades there. What do you think about that environment when you were in it?
Okay, so I have a lot to say about this too. So I, for middle school, went to a talented and gifted school, so it was actually like half and half. So I was not in the talented and gifted program. Okay. But I was hanging out with the talented and gifted kids, so it's called the TAG program.
And is this the elementary school, or this is the middle school that you've always been going to, or is this like a different one completely?
This is the one that I went through for 3 years. So that was all of my middle school experience was in this half TAG, half like regular kid. I'm putting air quotes if you're not watching the video, folks at home.
So but it was a program within your middle school there.
Yes. Okay. And now that middle school is all talented and gifted.
Okay.
So now they don't even have like the so-called like regular kids like that aren't in the program. But I think that was I think it was good that it was half and half, because a lot of the kids in TAG did have a lot of stress. And whether that was like pressure put on at home or just from being in the program, there's a lot of stress there. Especially they've been in this program probably since 4th grade and beyond. But some of those kids need the challenge. So that's one of the things that you learn about in different programs and stuff, like the TAG program or special ed programs, how to accommodate your students. So TAG is an accommodation, is how it's kind of labeled. And they do realize that these kids need more of a challenge because they can get bored. But I think that also introduces a lot of stress, especially if their parents are like not pressuring them to be in the program, but the kids most of the time don't know what it is. They just kind of follow like, oh, my parents are doing this and I'm going to send my kid there, and they're just there. Because they are in 4th grade. So it's very young to be explaining to them that, oh, you need more challenges. This is...
Yeah, no, that's fair. With these kids in the demographic there, would they be, all across the board, or would they be more of like affluent students that go there specifically?
In the tag program, or just like in the half and half school?
Both, I guess.
I think there's kids all across the board on either one. There's kids in the tag program who don't want to be in the tag program. There's kids who are in the tag program who need to be there, want to be there. They're all for it. But one of the problems that I think they're having now is these kids will move up together and all go to the same schools, because there's only like one tag school, elementary school, one tag middle school, and then high school they're kind of just on their own. But I've seen a lot of my friends who were in the tag program, because I did have a lot of tag friends, they do get burnt out.
Yeah.
Because they put on so much pressure in the beginning. And in high school, when I was just figuring out, like, oh, I'm good at school, I want to, like, do well and get good grades, they've been having that pressure for so long. They're like, finally, I'm free.
Yeah.
And, of course, that's not everybody. Because they'll get to high school and they'll still take, like, all the AP classes and everything. But they finally feel like they have that freedom a little bit more, because they get to choose their classes and all of these things, but they do get a little burnt out.
So they have more say when they enter that high school world instead of... And
there's a lot more social options too, I feel like, especially in my high school. It was a super big high school. You can join a bunch of clubs and stuff. So I think that helped. Middle school, you could basically do sports or NJHS, so like National Juniors Honor Society.
Okay. And
I think that was pretty much it.
So as you're getting broader and broader, you have a little bit more control. Like as an elementary school, obviously your parents are still helping you with everything, a lot of things. And then in middle school, maybe you have a little bit more choice, but still your parents are still sort of dictating what you do. And then, the funnel gets wider and wider as you enter high school there. With the kids, I asked that because I know, like, there's a lot of preparatory classes and a lot of preparatory time, and that starts as early as you want it to as a parent, right? You can start it in kindergarten, you can start it in elementary school, it doesn't matter, right? So it just depends on whenever the pressure is turned up on the kid. And so, like, when they enter high school, you're saying that they get a little bit more freedom. Do you think with a little bit more freedom, they're making decisions based on what they want more, or do you think they're still being sort of helicopter parented?
I think it depends. I think it really depends, because there are some kids who the AP program is great because you can get college credit for it, and it's a lot cheaper. So depending on any financial, like, challenges or interests or anything like that, AP classes are great, and any kid could take those. It's not like it was special to the tag program, or that, like, tag kids had their own individual school where it's very much more on, like, competition than learning. And, well, now I sound like I'm bashing the tag program. I'm really not. But it is a very competitive environment, and that's why they get so burnt out too. But in high school, it's still competitive with the AP scores and just, like, grades and stuff. You'll be comparing, oh, I got an 89%, or you'll hear somebody say, I got a 95%, I did so bad. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, I've definitely heard that before, and the only reason I asked, like, what sort of demographic it engulfs is because a lot of times, like, with kids with parents that don't have that much money, they can't really afford to put them into these nice preparatory schools with, really nice teachers and really nice curriculums. They have to stick with public school because it's their only means that they have. And so I know for me personally, like, when I saw a lot of the students going into higher level preparatory courses or like schools getting an option to enter like these AP type classes very, very early, like there's a lot of times there's a monetary aspect to it as well. And, you know, maybe there's some like financial incentives that help you out if your parent makes under a certain amount of money. But majority of cases there, I see like most people pay a good amount to go to these.
Yeah. So I was very lucky with my high school for how much AP like classes that they offered. I know many other schools did not have as many, but my school was just so big that it would have a lot more funding. But I have worked in schools where there are much less opportunities. Yeah. And I would know some of my friends would be signed up for one public school in another city, but they would put like their grandma's address and they would come to my school. So that is like one workaround that people would have just to give their kids an opportunity. Yeah. So it's one of those little loopholes. Yeah. And it's driven by the fact that their schools were not offering as much as my school did. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's hearing that's crazy to hear, because it's just somebody wanting to get their child a better education, right? And they have to go through sort of these hoops and make these like, you know, backdoor loopholes in order to get their kids into the school. Do you think that there's a lot of barriers to getting sort of like a better education?
That's a big question, Mike. Yeah. Yes, there are a lot of barriers, and some of them people can control and some of them they can't, because where you live is just where you live, and public schools are sometimes really good and sometimes not the best. Yeah. And you can have schools that are really great one neighborhood away from schools that are awful. There's a lot of people working on trying to make those schools better. It just takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of effort, and there are a lot of factors. Yeah, location for sure. It matters, unfortunately. You know, just because if there's the city where nobody wants to live in, no teachers want to teach in, then the curriculum and the coursework and the care is not going to be as good or as high, right? As another neighborhood where if it's a little bit more affluent, then you have more opportunities and teachers feel like they're getting paid a little bit better, then you're going to have more of those better teachers, better quality teachers. And I think for AP classes, you have to check me on this. I think you have to have a master's, so those teachers would be getting paid more, and if your school district can't afford that, then that's another factor of why there might not be AP classes, because you need higher educated teachers. And just that alone is taking back opportunities for communities who don't have the funding in their schools to pay teachers more.
Now, with these AP classes, would they across the board be in all high schools, or you said that they, you know, there's only there's criteria, right, for the teacher to have a master's degree in order to have it? So does that mean,
I believe so.
Does that
from
mean
what I've been told,
like not all high schools have it?
No, not all high schools would have it. So my school, I think, had like 17 AP classes offered, but I feel like the regular amount would be like 2 or 3 for a school that was not my size. Did not have 7,000 kids. You need to take it down to 400 kids. You probably don't need 17 AP classes. Yeah. But so some of my like thinking can be skewed by just my own experience, because I know usually it's like 2 to 3 AP classes. Like maybe you have some history and some science. And I think it usually maybe like a AP English. Okay. But I feel like it would usually be history or science that are at most schools. Okay. And then what is the difference between, like, what is the AP distinction? So AP is for kind of College Board. So you take the AP test at the end of the year. It's run by the College Board. I think you pay like $100 some. I'm sure that could change. And depending on if you get the scores 1 through 5, 5 is the highest.
Okay.
So I got a 3 on one of my tests, so I got to skip 1 semester of biology.
Okay.
But if I had gotten a 5, I could skip all of the first year of biology, at least at Eastern.
Okay.
So that's how it helps. So you could pay $200 instead of $2,000.
I see. Wow, that's very helpful.
Yeah, that is the financial aspect of taking or being provided and taking AP classes. Is it can save you a lot of money, and you can graduate earlier.
And now you're saying, depending on how you do, you can either skip partial or an entire year's worth.
But that does depend on the university that you attend.
Okay. Got it. And then the AP classes, just in general, are tougher than normal classes. Is that right?
Well, yes, because it is a college level class. That's how you can get college level credit. So you have probably a lot more material to go through, probably a lot faster, and you are learning at a college level.
Okay.
And you're taking a college level test.
Got it. And then you said you took AP classes before. Were you the type of person that like wanted to load up on AP courses, or did you just did you do it because you liked it? So
the AP classes, it was because I liked it and because I had the opportunity to, because I tested out.
Okay.
So I tested out of science and math, so I ended up taking AP biology and AP calculus. But for 1 full year of math, in high school, it counted as 1 semester of like college level class. So there's AP Calc AB and AP Calc BC. BC would have covered 2 semesters of college courses. And for mine, it spread out 1 semester of college course over a full year of high school. So I took the lower level down AP math.
I know that you said earlier that you were interested in sort of science, kind of got that spark. And you said just now that you also took calculus. Were you interested in sort of like the math world as well?
No, I actually really didn't like math, but I'm not someone who backs down from a challenge. Like, yes, I struggled in math a lot, but also in my head, I was thinking of the one teacher that said, it's probably not a good idea. And I was like, I'm going to prove her wrong. And that was part of it. But that's just part of my personality.
Oh, that's fair.
So I ended up just being a year ahead and dealing with struggling with math, and I really didn't like it because I was struggling, but I also kind of was proving to myself that I could do it.
But in the end, it all comes back to sort of science, natural science, just overall science. And so I know you said you took AP Bio in high school. Were there any other science courses that you really enjoyed?
Yes. So I had an honors zoology class. I had the same teacher for AP biology and honors zoology. So I took those sophomore year and junior year. And those honors zoology was definitely one of my favorites because the teacher would bring in animals, like live animals. So we had like a crocodile, an armadillo, lynx, there was a bunch. We had so many animals. We had lizards come in. We had birds of prey come in.
And they would come in live, right?
Yeah,
this is
live
not
animals.
like dissecting or anything like that.
We did a lot of dissections too. We dissected sharks, like stingrays, obviously pigs. I feel like everybody does pigs. Maybe frogs. We didn't do any frogs though, but a lot of other schools do frogs. So yeah, there's a lot of hands-on stuff in science that I really liked, and I think that was one of the most appealing things for me, was just because you could see things, you could touch things, you do labs and things. Yeah. Lots of things. Yeah. Said things like 4 times in a row. Whoop.
Yeah. With the animals, they're when they bring it in, do you get to interact with them, or do you get to?
It depends on the animal. I don't think they let the students hold the scorpions anymore. I think my year was the last year, and there's no like absolute reason why we were the last year. It's just like, oh, maybe we should let the kids hold the scorpions.
Yeah.
You don't pet the crocodile, but they did bring around the armadillo because it was in a good mood. Working with live animals in the classroom is, you just have to respect the animal space. If they don't feel like being held, you don't hold them. If they do and they're friendly, like if you have a ball python or something, super friendly. But if they're all like scared, you don't hand the animal around. Because there's all these students, they're all poking and prodding. It's like, okay, you can just look today, but maybe on another day where it's not scared, then you hand it around.
Mm-hmm.
So just part of animal ethics in the biology classroom.
Yeah. So I know that's more like the animal world of biology there. Is that something you're interested in going into, like more animal
I
related?
definitely would if I wasn't allergic to everything with fur.
Okay.
I think that would be the only thing holding me back, is because I don't want to spend my whole life sick.
Okay, fair. And so if you can't do that because of allergies, what aspect are you drawn to within biology?
I like seeing the bigger picture. I like seeing how everything is connected, like all these little, what's the word I'm looking for?
So I know that you said you're interested in teaching.
Yeah.
So are you more like teaching behind the desk more, or would you rather like teach in the field, like outside?
Oh, I would choose outside if I could.
Mm-hmm. Like in more of like a Department of Natural Resources type.
I would teach in a classroom, but I would definitely either bring things in like my teachers did, like bringing in animals, or I like the idea of a flipped classroom. I think you would definitely have to test it out, because that gives more lab time and working with your hands, which is a big thing in science. Learning how to kind of work with the community. It's not just all like individual lab work. Like you do have to do papers and do research and know how to record what you're doing, so you can give it to others and you can read others. It's like this whole scientific community that the kids that they do have to learn.
What is a flipped classroom?
So a flipped classroom is just doing notes at home and doing either homework, lab work, asking questions, having discussions. That happens in the classroom. So it is something that I would like to experiment with once I get my own classroom. I am doing student teaching next semester, and then hopefully I can have my own classroom after that.
Yeah.
But I would love to do that.
So a flipped classroom essentially just more efficient on the students and yourself?
More efficient in the terms of you're not spending as much class time just lecturing. The one downside is if kids want to ask questions during lecture, they can't ask them right away. They have to either email you or wait until they're in the classroom again.
Yeah.
So that's one of the downsides. And they also have to have the time at home to do the notes. So that's why you have to find a balance, especially like with a regular classroom and a flipped classroom. There's always a balance that you have to find. It will just take practice for me to find that balance.
And so would you be recording behind a camera and then sort of distributing like your lecture via video?
That is usually how it goes, especially over COVID. One of the biggest things was you print out the notes, you hand out the notes either like sometime before they're due, or students could print them at home. But if I'm working in a public school, I would hand them out, or private, any school. Anything but college. You don't have to print your own notes usually. And as a teacher, I would record myself, and there are like apps and stuff where you can pause a video and ask them questions Like they fill out a little question about something you've just talked about to kind of give a check-in of if they've been listening for real or if they're just playing the video in the background, and they would come in with their notes all done and things. But it would be me recording whatever I wanted to teach them that day.
Yeah, that sounds like really advanced, like from what I've experienced in the past, right? It's just, the teacher comes in and writes on the whiteboard and lectures in that way, that traditional classroom setting, that the pandemic sort of accelerated because we couldn't teach in person as much as we did in the past. So with the acceleration in teaching here, do you feel that it's a good thing that we're sort of teaching from home and kids can learn from home and sort of do a lot of things from home, but then coming together sort of in the classroom as more of like a collaborative work space?
I think it's a great thing to try, but honestly, it can change even year to year depending on your kids. Because if you have kids in your classroom that when they go home, they're going to be very distracted and they're not watching the videos, not doing the notes, or not doing their homework, then that's not really fair to them, because once they're out of your classroom, you don't really have control over that. So it can be good and it can be bad. And you just have to be willing to accommodate your students where they're at.
Is there one that you prefer over another, whether it's in classroom teaching, traditional sense, or sort of hybrid?
I think a hybrid I would prefer, because I think one way, if like during COVID and things, when I was taking my classes, all I was watching, all I was doing was just these long lecture videos where the teachers talk in like 2 times just in their regular voice, but there's no students to look at to see if they're confused. Like when you're in a traditional classroom where all the students are sat in front of you, you can look at their faces and see that they're all confused and pause and be like, okay, what do I need to explain better? You're all looking at me like fish, like, oh,
Yeah.
like they're not understanding. But you can't get those student cues when you're fully online. So it's when I was watching all these asynchronous videos and doing asynchronous classes where I never even meet the professor, I'm sitting there confused and they don't know. Like your student would have to be willing to reach out to you and say, hey, I'm not understanding this. But there's lots of students who either, one, don't care enough. So if you don't see their face in class and they're not confused, and they are confused, you're just like, I don't know. You can see it in the classroom. Or there's other students that are just too shy, or they don't want to admit that they don't understand it because they're like, oh, if everyone else is like, they can't see other students asking questions. Usually if one student gets her question answered, it kind of can be a waterfall for other students who might not speak up for themselves originally, but they see, oh, other people are asking, so now I can ask my question. I'm not going to stand out like a sore thumb. You can't see other students sending emails if you're just working from home.
Yeah. It is so different. I think I would have totally taken advantage of the system. Like I would have been like, oh, okay, like I get to do this from home. So number one, I don't need to get dressed at all. Like that's amazing, right? I don't need to make any food, or I'll just go to the fridge, right? I'll be distracted, obviously. I'll purposely be distracted because I'll probably flip on I don't know, some video games or TV or something, just because there is the flexibility behind the screen and they can't see you in a traditional sense. And so do you think a majority of the students are taking advantage of this sort of behind the screen classroom setting?
I don't know about majority. There's definitely some that will, but that's with like any school. Yeah. Any school setting, there's going to be students that will be looking for a way out wherever they can find it. Just because maybe school's not their thing. Yeah. And once they get out of like a sitting down for 7 hours, then they kind of find something that they like to do. But I will say even I took advantage of the system a little bit. Like all the teachers, they would just make everything open note because they don't want to record you. They don't want to have all of these issues. Like when you're taking a test online, you can record it, but it's just sometimes it can feel like an invasion of privacy.
Yeah.
Like stuff can happen that you just can't control because you're not the only one in the house. It's not a school setting. Some mom could come in with a vacuum and start vacuuming in the middle of your test. You'll be like, what are you doing? I'm taking a test. So a lot of my tests became untimed, open note, and that is something you can take advantage of, but it was also something that was offered to you. There's lots of different styles of cheating that were coming out. Just you would have to record your whole room if it was recorded because people were putting stuff up on the walls. And you could just see them reading off of it, but it's hard to prove it because they're at their house. It's not like kids who would write on the label of the water bottle or something and put it on their desk. Yeah, that's something you can prove because you can grab the water bottle off their desk and be like, I see like the math formulas on here. You're cheating. But at home, all you could see are their eyes going back and forth on the wall. So it's like, they look like they're cheating. But how do you prove that? So that's why a lot of them were open note.
It must be so easy to play hooky. It's just like, because you're not even there. You're not even at school. You're literally you're playing hooky like already, right? And you're just behind your screen. So it must be so hard to like guarantee that the students are engaged and actually trying to learn, not cheating, keeping sort of like an honor system. Like that must be so difficult to do. And so
school.
So that's why you probably have like the open note concept there. And do you think that's okay to have the resources during like a test, like Google?
I think, I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship. It's one of those things, again, you have to find a balance. Because if you need to know the content and have it memorized so that you understand something else in the future, because a lot of science concepts will build off of each other. That's what I was trying to say this before. Like all the little functions of a cell, they all build up together and they build up to like a whole ecosystem. And that's the connectedness of all science. But if you don't learn some of the basics because you just looked it up on Google, then you're going to have a really hard time learning the more complex topics in the upcoming units. So you have to at least be able to tell your students or only offer the open note resources if you know they can just look this up in the future and that's all they'll need to do. But if they need to utilize it and apply it somewhere else, it's hard to look it up, re-understand it, then reapply it to something else. That's just going to be more work for them. So you have to let them know what's important. And part of that is deciding, okay, this can be open note, but this can't be, is kind of indicating to your students what is important.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is sort of retention, right? Like, anybody can look something up on Google and sort of spit back an answer at you, but retention and understanding on how to apply it is sort of what you're going to miss out on if you keep doing that in the long run. Yep,
because I can tell you, like some of my organic chemistry class was online, and I definitely would have learned a lot more and had more retention of it if I had to do it in class, because that was just one class that was open note. And then I had to take biochemistry after that. And I had to relearn a lot of things for biochemistry, which was an in-person class. It was actually a flipped classroom too.
Okay. Yeah, organic chemistry, that sounds very, very difficult there.
It was a rough class, and especially online.
So I know that you said you were in a competitive environment, as was stated before. Do you, and I'm assuming that sort of an environment, that competitive environment, drove you to more complex topics like science, like more complex subjects like science, do you think that that environment was a healthy environment, like mentally?
I think for me, I was pretty okay because as much as I'm competitive, I'm mostly just competitive with myself. I just want to do better than I did before. But definitely for other kids, like all my friends that were very competitive and were comparing scores, if they got a bad grade, it was like they were saying that they would just start thinking that they were stupid because everyone else was getting a good grade. So in that sense, it can be bad. You have to find, again, education is all about balance. You have to find the balance between having that intrinsic motivation where you can motivate yourself and extrinsic motivation where other things are motivating you. But making sure that you're not putting yourself down because of it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people and a lot of my friends did not do good with competition because they would use it to put themselves down and try and use that negative feeling. Okay, I can't be stupid again. I have to do better. But that's not the mindset that you want your students to have. You want them to be like, oh, I'm smart, I can do better. Not, oh, I'm stupid, I have to do better.
Like 95%, and they feel bad for themselves. Like, get out of here.
Yeah,
come on.
It's a 95%, even like 80%. It's like, yes, you have room for growth. So this is a big topic for a lot of the college education courses I took, is a growth mindset. So you always have space to grow. You could be getting 100%, you still have space to grow.
Yeah.
You could be getting a 50% and you have space to grow. And it's not that you're stupid. It's not that you're super smart. It's just that you're trying and you're motivated and you know you can do better and are willing to do better. That's growth mindset.
Yeah, I think, numbers is one metric, but like how good of a metric is that? And also, like, what about snapshot, right? Like, in this time that you took this test, you got 100%. 3 weeks from now, if you take this same test and you weren't prepared for it, what would you get? So again, like what we said about retention, it's like, did you actually retain it? Do you actually understand it? And honestly, like, if you take on so many different courses that you're not interested in and you just want to pad up your resume, after that, how much of those classes do you retain? Right? Is it relevant? And so it's like, yeah, there's a lot of pressure from your parents to take one course or to take many courses, but it's like, I don't know if that's the best approach, because ultimately it's like, is it something that you even want to do? Yeah.
I really only took classes I was interested in, but I know there was a lot of my friends who took classes that they weren't interested in, and as they did well in the courses, but they already knew it wasn't their passion, but they were doing it to like get ahead in the college credits and like get it out of the way was kind of the mindset. But it was still a big stressor for them because AP classes did take a lot of time. They took a lot of effort. If you did any extracurriculars, there's definitely a war for how much time.
Sports.
Yep, sports. That was, one of my big things was I would spend hours at cross country, and it's like, I can't be taking 5 AP classes like some of my friends were.
Yeah.
So I did pick and choose which ones I wanted to spend time on.
It's just so draining, right? Because then you're physically drained because you did whatever sport that you were in, and then you go home and you look at, the mountain of homework. Tasks and and homework that you still need to accomplish, and it's like you can't give your full effort. And I think that's a very big idea, is like, I can't give my full, I can't give my all. I'm very spread thin because I'm trying to do all these things and I'm trying to write all these things on my resume just to say I did it. But like, how well did you do it? Do you care? Do you even care? Right? And so I think you're coming at it with a very healthy mindset. It's like, this is actually something I want to do. right? It's like, some people can think that's selfish, but I think honestly it's the only way, because it's like otherwise you won't care.
Yep. High school, anything honestly before college, even in college, it's all exploratory. I found something that I really liked when I took 8th grade science, and I decided that I wanted to get ahead in that, so I did.
Yeah.
And I got more opportunities from that. I realized I still really liked it, so I stuck with it. But if you're not super interested in something after you get a taste of it, like you take a regular class, like at 9th grade English or something, if you decide, I really don't like 9th grade English, maybe you shouldn't do AP literature because you want a college credit of it. Maybe you should spend your time on like math or something if you like math, and you'll be able to put your full effort behind that.
Yeah, I think full effort, being sincere and genuine about what you actually like to do, will get you a lot farther than in the long run, right? Than if you're just doing something every day that you are good at, but you just one, are indifferent, don't care, or you actually just hate it.
Yeah.
Right? You're just like, like I'm good at this, but I hate it. Yeah. So it's like, what am I doing? I'm just running on a wheel here, going back and forth and not actually making any progress that I want to see.
That can cause a lot of burnout.
Yeah.
Because you just feel like, I have no purpose doing this. This is not what I wanted to do, but I feel like I have to because I signed up for this class. There's a lot of regret that you can have once you get in that pickle.
Yeah. Burnout. Do you think a lot of kids are getting burned out?
Oh, yeah.
It's just really strange, right? Because it's like, you're a kid. How can you be getting burned out? What do you mean, right? Like, you don't. A lot of the times you don't have financial burdens. You don't have, rent to pay or something like that, or like these crazy responsibilities. Like, why do you think burnout exists for kids?
I think comparing it to adult problems isn't the way that you should go about it, because even though they're like quote unquote like kid problems, they're the biggest problems that they face so far. So even though they might be having financial issues. Usually, sometimes it's like parents and stuff. So you don't know what's going on at home. But even though they're not having financial burdens, maybe they just had their first girlfriend and they just broke up with their first girlfriend. And then as an adult, you're like, oh, things come and go. Like, maybe it wasn't your match. But like for these kids, it's the end of the world because it's their first girlfriend and they never had their heart broken before.
Yeah.
But that doesn't diminish what they're feeling. That's just kind of, it's a first. So even though these are like kid problems, like maybe if you're in like kindergarten and your milk spilled or something, you're like, oh, it's not the end of the world. But to this kid, it's the worst thing that happened all day, and their life is only 5 years. So they're like, it's the end of the world. So that's one mindset that you have to have as a teacher, is like, even though this doesn't seem like a big deal to me because I've like endured so many other bigger problems like rent and finances and like something not going right on vacation and all these big things. You have to remember that these kids are just kids.
Yeah, subjectivity, like it's just based on the individual person and what they're going through at that time. Is maybe it's the biggest challenge that they've gone through. I hear that. How are a lot of kids dating like before high school?
Oh, before high school? I don't know. There's like those middle school relationships and stuff. I don't.
What is the shelf life or like the longevity of it?
I don't pay attention to that.
Right. Like,
as a teacher, it's like you try. I would stay out of student drama. Like, you can hear stuff in the hallway, but you're not asking deep questions. You don't want to get involved.
Fair enough. I think it's
be that nosy teacher. You can be the nosy teacher if you want to be, but I wouldn't be that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fair. Because I just remember like if you're in like a competitive environment, like I guess for me, I was just like, I don't remember like any talks of dating. It's like there's no time for it. There's like so much other stuff that you care about. It's like why is this even here?
Well, as kids, I think we cared about a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, we go outside for recess and we do all these things. But there's definitely like those crushes and people dating sometimes, but usually it would be like 2 weeks, you know?
So short shelf life.
At least when I was in middle school. Who knows?
That's fair enough. And so now you're going through university. And are you still sticking with teaching? And
I would hope so. I'm almost graduated.
are you still very passionate like about biology specifically?
I am. I really enjoy biology because it's just I don't know. In my head, I can connect it to anything. You take so many different inventions just from biological processes, or just like looking at nature. You see a bunch of designs that you see in like computers or anything. There's so much that we base off nature because you just learn from nature. That's where we came from. Like, it's fun. It's good. It's fun to see. Yeah.
It's just such like I remember like having a difficult time in biology. I was like, this I'm not grasping the concepts well. Like we have to like dissect pigs.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, why?
That can be a big turnoff.
I don't understand why we're doing this. Like I just didn't understand it like for myself. And I guess it's not something that like I was super passionate about, but I could definitely understand like moving forward from this point where I am now. I'm like, oh yeah, like that's the natural world. That's the whole natural world around us, right? And that's very interesting. And so with you do you only see yourself being like in the teaching route, or would you apply biology in a different manner?
At this time, the two kind of careers that I have looked into are EMT and teaching. So EMT, like it is life science a little bit, a lot, because it's anatomy, physiology, keeping people alive.
Yeah.
And both of them are kind of services to the community. So they're, as much as they are different, because like when you're driving around in a bus and you're like going to calls to make sure that everybody's healthy, and one is teaching students content. So they are both serving positions, and they do have to do with science.
And what I'm hearing here, the theme is people-based. So you would really like much more enjoy a position that you get to interact with people more during the day.
I think I would go a little crazy if I was stuck in a cubicle all day.
Yeah, that's fair. Or like just working from home behind a desk.
Yeah, that did not serve me well during COVID.
Yeah.
Because I did do tutoring, and I did do kind of like supplemental instruction, which is basically like a glorified tutor. So we called ourselves, because we would have like not little lessons or stuff, but we would do like activities instead of tutoring, which is like teaching and students coming to you. And I did 1 semester in person of supplemental instruction, but the next like 1.5 years of doing supplemental instruction and tutoring were online. And it was a lot more difficult to connect with students compared to when I do substitute teaching. I know all my students' names. I know all their students' faces. I just substitute for one class. I'm not like magical where I learn it in a day, but since I've been in that class like 5 times, I know most of the students. But it's very different.
Yeah.
You can connect a lot better.
What is it now? Today, like is it still hybrid setting, or is it back to traditional classroom setting?
I think I would say most has gone back to traditional. Maybe there might be more flipped classrooms just because teachers have the videos that they've already made.
Yeah. And they just might find it just more efficient. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like we can just do, like we can disseminate information so quickly, so
Mhm.
easily, and so efficiently. It was like, why go back to this traditional model?
Yeah. But the one thing that did drive me crazy about that was when I would have to watch like 3 40-minute videos
Mm.
instead of just going to class once.
Mm.
And it just would drag on and on and on.
Yeah.
It drove me crazy.
Yeah. Or having meetings.
Yeah.
Behind a screen at your house. It's just like sitting there for like
I definitely made
many,
lunch
many hours.
a few times during some of my classes.
Yeah.
Just have the professor going on, have your camera off, and you're just making lunch.
Yeah. It's like, what information is even relevant to you, right?
Mhm.
Like, because if you're listening on a Zoom call,
It's like a podcast.
yeah, and it's like, it's not even relevant to you,
It depends on the subject.
right? It's like, oh, I'm going to go do something else, right? It's
Yeah.
so easy, right? But honestly, like, even if you were in classroom setting, why can't a kid just say, I'm not interested? Like,
I mean, they can, but they do have to sit there.
yeah,
You can't just go wander around the school like that. As much as you can wander around your house, that's not a safety issue.
Mm.
If you're wandering around the school, then it's like, oh, if there's an emergency, like if there's a tornado drill or like a more serious emergency, where are my students?
yeah. I just asked that because, like, I was an okay student,
Mhm.
but it was just like, some of these courses, I just didn't see how they were relevant, nor did I care. And so it's just like, I wished I could tailor my own curriculum, and like do something that I actually
I have a
enjoy.
word for this.
What
As a
is that
teacher.
word?
So it's called differentiation.
Hmm.
It's also a cellular biology term, but no, that is the cellular biology term.
What was the term again?
What is a teaching term?
Oh, you
Differential
haven't said it.
instruction. That's the teaching term, not the cellular biology term.
Okay. Differential instruction.
I believe that would be it. It's
Okay.
something very close to that. I'm pretty sure I recalled it correctly.
Okay.
But differentiated instruction?
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like the
Okay.
concept is there.
Yes,
right?
the concept is there.
Yeah.
But it's once you get to know your students and your students' interests,
Mhm.
you kind of don't just focus on the lecture. You take their interests. Like if someone's interested in construction,
Mm.
I will be able to tie whatever lesson I'm doing to construction
Mm.
to make it relevant to them. Because once you get it to what they're interested in and what they think is relevant to them, that will increase their retention rate of
Uh-huh.
your material. Because, oh wow, this actually makes sense. Like for one of my student observation classes, it's like practicum. You go into a real classroom and you can teach a lesson. Practicum is the class.
Mm.
And I did mine on kind of, when you see like a highway, you see how the bushes kind of build up into trees. It goes grass to bushes to trees. Somebody in construction was like, who was interested in construction, why is this relevant to me? I was like, well, you're going to have to talk with anybody if you're building like a building or something, or you're building a road. You're going to have to talk to these people about what happens with the environment that you're building in. So you'll have to, if you're talking with these environmentalists or the people in charge of the environment, you should be able to sound educated, know what you're talking about, because if you know like their concerns, they're going to take your project and probably make it a little bit easier. They'll be happier to work with you if you understand where they're coming from.
Mm.
They'll be more understanding of what you want to do. They'll be like, oh, this guy knows his stuff.
Mm.
He kind of looked at me. He was like, oh, that makes sense. Like getting to know what other people are trying to tell you, whether it's like legal stuff, environmental stuff. You got to know that in construction, because these are the people you're going to be dealing with. These are the people who are going to be on the boards that you're applying to build this hotel or do this road, make
Yeah.
this a roundabout.
Yeah. I hear that. I think coming from a little bit of an engineering background, I think I see that this has to serve a purpose, right? Like,
Mhm.
and if it's not serving a purpose, why am I learning it, right? So it's like, okay, I need to pick up this hammer because I'm building a house. Like, I know why I'm doing it, and I know why this is useful, because without this, I can't build this.
Yep.
And so, like, without a proper roadmap, sometimes it seems very, very vague for a lot of people. It's like, okay, so you're teaching me, like, cell biology. Okay. Like, me personally, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I mean, that's pretty interesting, because it's like on a molecular level, it's like what's going on around you. But it's like, how am I going to use this? Like, what am I going to do with this? Right. And so that's the question I've always like asked whenever like classes were just boring, or like I didn't understand like what I was going to do with it.
Yep. So that's having an intention behind what you're teaching is important. And you should always communicate the intention of the lesson to the students. Because I have like an English class, and I asked them while they were reading, what is the purpose of reading? And they kind of just looked at me and they're like, to read a book. I was like, why would you be reading a book? For fun. I was like, okay, well, what else? And they kind of looked at me. They're like, why is she asking me why reading is important? And I talked with them probably for like 10 minutes about what kind of stuff do you have to read when you're an adult. Like, I brought up taxes, like that's a big thing, or just reading instructions to build a desk, or reading or typing out an email to your boss or whoever you're servicing. Like, if you're in a service industry and you have to talk to your customers, you have to know how to read, you have to know how to write, and you have to know how to do it well and professional.
Yeah.
Or you have to know the different levels of professionalism. If you're writing a friend, then you don't have to be as professional. You don't have to worry about your commas. But if you're emailing the top dog in your business, you should probably check your commas. And that was kind of the first time I think anyone's asked them that. And they're sixth graders. So it's like, you made it this far. And no one ever taught you the importance of reading? Or they just weren't listening.
Yeah. I like that you're explaining to them like why they're using, the tool that they're using. Yep. Right. I think that's very helpful, because otherwise, like, it would just get very disengaged. Or so I would see how somebody can just get super turned off or disengaged because it's just like, I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're not telling me why. Maybe you're just recycling your lesson plans, right? Just because you didn't want to put in the effort, right? There's a lot of factors that can be behind the scenes, and honestly, like, we're moving in such a fast pace in terms of growth and innovation. Like, how do you keep up with that?
Like with teaching them about the tools, like new tools coming out?
Yeah, new tools coming out, or like getting rid of old curriculum.
Yeah, that can be a tough one. So for curriculum, it may depend on your school district. Sometimes you're given like a pretty strict curriculum that you kind of have to stick to that. In other districts, you have more freedom. So sometimes you have the freedom to throw out old curriculum, sometimes you don't, but usually you do have freedom in your classroom to teach it how you would like. Usually. And I think with that freedom, you can add in different tools. Like the class I'm taking right now, it's the digital kind of how to use digital media in the classroom. And the professor is having us explore a lot of different new tools, like 3D worlds and building 3D things. I know some of the kids at the middle school that I sub at have a 3D printer, so they'll be able to, if they're in the STEM program, the science, tech, engineering, and math, they can just print 3D things whenever they want. Like one of the kids was making a little Mother's Day keychain, and you have to know how to program it. They say it's not that hard, but I was like, I never learned how to do that, so you already know more than me. Or Finding new tools even on old programs like PowerPoint and things. As much as I knew how to make a PowerPoint, I didn't know how to do all the fancy stuff with it until this class, really. And that can make things a little more interesting for the kids. And then you can also teach the kids how to use it. Like one of the kids with Microsoft Word or something was learning about how to use the indents, or like not just the tab button, but how to change at the top with the arrows. You can slide those over and it can change how your whole paper is formatted. Or if you highlight a paragraph, you can move it over like an inch for the whole thing. And I taught him how to do that. And he was like, oh my gosh, that makes everything so much easier.
Yeah.
So you have all these little tools. And it can be hard to keep up to date with a lot of the new stuff that's coming out. So that's why you have your professional development time that you have to do as a teacher, or you have other teachers, you have just your own research. But you have to be intentional about it. You have to figure out, you have to take your own time and talk to people, research it yourself, and figure out a way that you can incorporate it. It doesn't just happen like magic.
Yeah, I really like the fact that you like take the time. You really try to take the time, and you explain why, you explain how, and you explain, okay, here's some new tools actually that maybe like you're not so closed-minded where it's like this curriculum plan was taught since the 60s. And we have to keep repeating this because we're building the same people that we were in the 60s. It's like you acknowledge the fact that like, hey, we're changing. Like, it's always changing. And also, it's really fast at this moment in time, right? It's changing at a much more rapid rate than it was before. And as such, like, I need to learn more so then I can teach them about these new changing technologies.
Yep.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time as a teacher too.
Yeah. Okay. So engaging teachers. Yeah. I've always loved engaging teachers, and honestly, I only remember one, right? And I think that's similar case to a lot of people. Just one, right? Or a couple, but definitely not like the majority. And I respected this teacher a lot because they participated, they tried to engage as much as possible, they tried to reason, and I think the main point is they try to back up what they say with their action, right? He was also my cross-country coach, and that's why he was my math teacher and he was my cross-country coach. He was just really engaging and just like cared, essentially, right? And that's why I respect, really anybody that just like cares and are really passionate about what they do. And so how do you create more teachers with this type of attitude?
I think it really has to do with their program that they go through. I think Eastern does a good job with their program, with highlighting the things that you should care about, highlighting your students, what accommodations that they need, very student-centered learning for teachers. Like students, for a lot of, especially our education classes, it's all focused around the students. And I think that's why Eastern is one of the top schools for teaching, is just because they turn out a lot of teachers who have the confidence in the classroom, the student skills, and they do care. And if you make it through Eastern's program without saying, okay, maybe this isn't for me, it's because you care. Because there's no way you went through, well, there is a way that you went through so many classes without without feeling that, but most of the teachers or like pre-service teachers that I've met through there are very passionate about teaching.
And I think, just like life, right? Like there's things that you do outside of your classroom, outside of your work, and extracurricular activities is what we call them. Do you think those activities are important?
Yes. So I had a lot of extracurriculars that I would do, and I would make sure to make time for them. That's where you meet a lot of friends. It's kind of where you find purposes outside of like just if you're in like a competitive school environment, you kind of get a solace in doing your own thing aside from school. It gives you activities to do, maybe new skills. There's like a comic club, and I've seen them around selling stickers and doing stuff at community events. Especially there's a few events where they were just the community, but a lot of my school's clubs would go out there, have a tent, either sharing cultural food or products that they're making as the club, or like pie in the face for like the community service ones who don't have skills, but they're just like fun little things that you can do. So I think it's super important to do stuff outside of school, because you kind of have a community that's not all focused on grades or tests or quiz next week or homework due tomorrow. It's special. It's like your special time to do things that you really want to do, or kind of explore interests that you aren't going to find in the classroom.
What extracurricular activities did you do?
So I had quite a few. So I had my youth groups. Those were kind of like the super after school, usually like 7 to 9. And those are just people that I had known forever, and we would go on mission trips. We would like travel across the country, and it would be super fun. But school-based ones, I joined a couple of the cultural groups. So I was in the Indian American Student Association, the Asian Pacific American, APAC, Asian Pacific American Club. Let's see. I learned how to do Chinese yo-yo, but I wasn't in the Chinese yo-yo club officially.
Interesting.
I did Interact, so it's kind of like NHS, but it was more local instead of national. Actually, it's all over the country, but I was the public relations person for my senior year.
Wow.
So
how do you keep up? How do you keep up with all these activities?
They're all on different days of the week.
Okay.
I did my homework as fast as I could. And I think this was, again, one of the benefits of getting ahead in a couple classes was I had like a half senior, half junior year twice, because I was ahead in a couple classes. So my senior year, I got to pick a lot more of my classes than I would have. So my junior year, even with SATs and all the stressful things, since I wasn't in like the hardest classes, like I'd taken chemistry my sophomore year, which in most schools is normal, I think, because we had geophys, which a lot of school districts didn't have, as like a required freshman year. Usually I think you do physics or something. But it opened up my schedule a lot for not all my heavy classes landed in 1 year.
Yeah, so you like bought yourself more time, so you can do more of these extracurriculars and whatever interested you more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know you said there's a lot of different activities here. Was there one that sort of spoke to you more, or like that you enjoyed more?
I think I really liked the cultural clubs. So I learned their dances and stuff. Everyone was super happy to like have other races there and stuff, because we are there just to learn. So I learned a lot about any race struggles that I don't think I would have learned just being in class. Like we would just sit in a circle and we would talk about like things like model minority, or just cartoons and stuff, and how they portray other races and how that affected the kids, or how any kind of like biracial struggle or something. These are things I don't think I would have run into in class. So going and joining these classes, or not classes, joining these extracurriculars and sitting there, I think helped me understand people better. And like maybe I wouldn't see like these microaggressions or anything like that, but it's like, oh, I talked to these people, or I heard these people talking. I heard them, like, they were super fun clubs, but we would also have super serious conversations where I learned a lot, and I just was sitting there listening. And I think that's important, and I think that will help me understand my students better in the future and kind of know how to react to comments or things that would make them not feel safe in school.
So again, it always comes back to people. And this was another aspect of that, is that getting to see different people different than you, ethnicity-wise, race-wise, color-wise. So that's the reason more that you were drawn towards like an international type activity. Do you think this would be beneficial for other people to try?
Yeah, I think it would be awesome for everybody to try. You get to learn about other people's cultures, other people's struggles, and you get to kind of celebrate what makes their culture special. Like I had a bunch of food, like we would have food days and everybody would bring like their homemade like cultural food, and it was just a good time. And you learned a lot. Especially
now with diversity and inclusion being such a big topic. Do you feel that like there's enough representation from people in positions, like job positions?
It depends on the community. It's one of those honestly, not even per district, but like per school things. Because my school you could have 40 people who were part of the Asian Pacific American Club who were Asian people. But there's not 40 people at other schools that could sit there. You had that diversity if you had like a mostly white school, you're not gonna have students that would feel comfortable sitting in class or like outside of class. Like you wouldn't have enough students to have a club. But my school was so big that even if they were just like 5% of the population, or I think they might be like 12% or something of my school, there's enough of them there that even if half of the kids in the club don't show up, we'll still have a good conversation because there's still 15 of us there.
Yeah. I think that mindset's really important to have. Like you said, growth mindset. To me, I think of just growing the pie, right? Just like, if you look at it the other way, it's like, it's very scarcity mindset. It's like, oh, okay, like we shouldn't include them for whatever reason because they're different, right? That's very much closed-minded, right? And I think expanding the pie is the right thing to do. And like growing up, like going to school was definitely very much like a homogenous population, and mostly it was, white American students around me, which was an indicator that like perhaps it was more of like an affluent neighborhood. But like personally, I very much enjoyed, like I had some neighbors that came in that were Indian students, and I think I interacted with them a lot, and I can relate to them a lot because like, oh, you're different, I'm different, right? Like we're not part of like the general norm. I think that's very important to have, because you see other perspectives, right? You're not just always like so stuck in your own way of thinking and your bubble of thinking that's around you.
Yeah, and I think going to the clubs, and when we did have those serious talks, there are some things where I was like, oh, I would not, like, I wouldn't be thinking about this if I wasn't here. And these students did feel comfortable because their peers did understand them. And there was lots of times where kids would go and they would start to cry because it's like, I experienced this today, or, oh, like, I've been experiencing something my whole life of, like, especially the biracial students would be like, I don't know which side I fit in the most, or I feel like I don't fit in. And those are the times when they would cry.
Expanding your horizons is very important. And, you know, one way to do that is just like, we talk about gender norms, right? And how people think of themselves as, you know, LGBT, or, you know, they identify as something else, whatever they want to identify as. Like, is that a big proponent today in classrooms settings, or like in you know, K through 12 or college?
Yeah, so that's, again, part of your student's identity. A lot of teaching to make your students feel comfortable, whether it's race-related, ethnicity, any disabilities or anything, and LGBTQ. These are all kind of what are focused on in a lot of the education classes that I'm in, as well as in classrooms today, because these students should feel like they belong. And feeling like you belong in the classroom is a precursor to feeling like you can learn in that classroom. So it's very important for students to feel like they fit in.
Yeah. And so now we're like reaching sort of, you know, beyond race, and we're going into gender, right? It's like, you know, maybe in the past, like, people didn't need to, like, people weren't, either they were too scared to talk about it, or they just kind of repressed it down and they wouldn't express themselves fully. But now we have more opportunity to do that, whether it's, you know, brought on by online presence of influencers and whatnot. But, you know, do you think that adds to, like, do you think that adds positively to, like, the classroom setting?
I think that, yes, because if students feel like they can express themselves, people are saying, oh, like, it's more prevalent today. I feel like it's not more prevalent, it's just people are more open about it. And maybe they're discovering themselves a little bit earlier than they would have, because once you, like, go off to college or you go off on your own, then you have kind of that time for self-exploration. I feel like people are doing their self-exploration a little earlier now, just because it's a little more accepted. It's more talked about. Yeah,
that's fair. Like, as we talked about the funnel before, like, the funnel gets wider and wider. And with college, like, your parents aren't telling you really what to do anymore. You have a lot more freedom. You choose when you go to bed. You choose what to eat. And it's only the funnel, I would imagine, to only get bigger and bigger. Do you feel that that's exciting, that you're getting more and more freedoms, or do you feel like, oh my gosh, like, there's more things to worry about now, or like more responsibilities?
I think it's just part of growing up. Is it can be scary, but it is exciting. So both.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Like, I just remember, like, coming out, I was like, oh no, like, I have to find a job now, and like, I have to, like, make enough to make ends meet. And it's like, these are very different conversations than, like, in the past, where I was just like worried about grades and worried about like, I don't know, friendships or something, right? Or social. But now, like, these are very real matters. It's like, it's your livelihood now. So do you think that, like, coming into college, that you were ready for that step?
My going to college was like, I had one regular semester and then COVID happened and I just moved back home. So it's hard for me to answer that, because as much as I have become more independent, it's also like 2 years of my life was like, hold on, just wait. You're going back home. So I think usually people are not ready, but you kind of just jump in and you work with what you got.
Yeah, I think like today, like we're like, oh, there's so many alternatives to college. Like, why do we even have to go to college, right? And they're really outdated. Like, why am I paying all this money in order and go to college just to be indebted to not really learn anything relevant and come out and not get a job that I wanted?
Yeah.
Right. But I think there's so many positives about colleges too, right? Sort of like the real components of college that you can't get away from, like people, like your environment, right? Those are really great teachers because it's reality, right?
Yeah. And you have people to struggle with because they're all going through the same thing. You're all the same age. You're all going to the same school. It is a big component.
Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, there's dishes, right? Who's going to do them, right? I'm not going to do all of them, right? And so
only 3 dishes are mine, 5 are yours, so you should do the dishes.
So you learn how to split responsibility. You learn how to like work as a team, right? In order to solve something, right? And that's very real. And I think that's hard if you never go through that. Like if things are always taken care of for you and, you know, parents are always doing it for you, then you just feel like, oh, like I'm the princess or I am the prince, right? Like I don't need to do any of this, like because it's always been done for me. And then you get a hard reality check when you're all on your own and you didn't get a practice run. Exactly. And that's like, those are the very real components. It's like, oh my gosh, like it's 5 people and we're sharing one bathroom, right? Like how do we make this scheduling process work, right? Where everybody's happy. And it's like, no, it's not everybody's going to be happy. Like some people are going to be like bum rushing the bathroom, right? Because you chose the wrong time, right? Or you didn't stick to your dedicated time. Designated time. But it's like, these are really great lessons because it makes you just like more understanding, more of a problem solver rather than some like pessimistic type entitled person. And I think like part of that has to do with just so much depression and anxiety for a lot of people. It's like maybe they went through life just being really coddled, right? Or like whatever they were going through with tough situations in their lives, and like maybe finances or parents not staying together. Like, do you think there's a lot of like depression and anxiety today?
I think so. It's a very stressful world out there, even for my middle schoolers. And again, it comes to kids are experiencing things for the first time, and even if they're kid problems, you still have to take them seriously. It's the first time they're going through these things. It can be super rough, and then they do have like what so-called like adult problems, like maybe a parent passes away, or there's foster kids or kids at risk, or all of these factors, outside factors you have to consider that you might not even guess. You just have to be very conscientious of how you treat your students and be there for them if you can, and if you know. And if it's not you, then refer them to someone else and see who they trust. You really just have to watch for their tells. Yeah.
Or just social media, right? Social media is like an inescapable component of life now. Yeah. Right? And like so much of your life is taken up by social media, whether you're the one behind the camera, you're in front of the camera. It's sort of like the only way that we know now, like how to interact, which is crazy, right? Because it's like we're not interacting like this anymore. We're interacting, third party type behind a screen, and that's how we get our information. That's how we get our, laughter, our joy. Like I don't know if that's such a good way to go about things. And like,
So, yeah, as a teacher, you have to see that as an opportunity and not a hindrance. So you can incorporate social media into your classroom. You could do like projects. You could share things over social media. You could have your students doing blogs. Like, these are all digital tools that you can use. And it can also teach students how to interact online with a purpose in mind, not just spouting out anything that they're thinking, learning the social, I guess, not constructs, but like social expectations of being online, what's appropriate, no, it's not appropriate. These are things you can practice through also teaching content.
I mean, it's a great tool. Don't get me wrong. You can get information really quickly. You can communicate very quickly. But, you know,
it can be rough too.
It can be so rough, right? Because just like a lot about like people getting depressed, suicide rates, like friends not doing well, and then taking to social media and then not getting the result that they wanted. How does it affect different genders, whether you're LGBT, you're male, you're female, or other, right? Like, I just imagine like social media is so negative for females.
Yeah, it can be. It's not really, you can't avoid it.
Yeah.
But I think just helping your students feel confident in your classroom, it is hard to kind of mitigate what they're doing outside of your classroom. So when they're in your classroom, that's the time that you have to help them. That's just how you have to see it, because as much as they have all the negativity, you can make it positive in your classroom. And that's all the power I have, really.
Have you seen the Social Dilemma on Netflix?
I have not.
Okay. So basically it's talking about all of this and how social media affects us and, you know, ways to mitigate it. One of those ways was to like put your phone in some sort of cookie jar or like some sort of sealed lock mechanism, like over dinner, because you want to increase engagement in family time. Like, personally, I think that's a good idea, but it seems that like it's not always possible, because like maybe there's an emergency or like you're doing some work and you sort of need that phone by you.
Yeah. Also, the duo logins, that's the bane of my existence, where you have to use your phone to log into your computer or something, because then it's like, well, I didn't want to bring my phone to study, but now I have to, because I have to keep logging into different things, and I have to press, yes, it's me, no, it's not me.
Yeah. And the other part that I was speaking to was that, you know, for males, they want to be, you know, perfect, and they want to be, you know, super muscular and have a lot of like financial success, right? And then for females, it's like they want to look the best in terms of image and, you know, just like body comparison, and obviously looking at it is like that's not healthy.
Yeah. So it's what they're gonna see. I'm not their parent, so I can't be like, oh, don't follow these accounts on Instagram, or don't have an Instagram, don't have a TikTok. Like, this is not my place to say. I can say don't use it in class. Another thing that I could do is show more diversity in my classroom, like make sure all the cartoons are not like the female body image of like super skinny waist and like hourglass figure. Just have regular looking people in your classroom. And hopefully that can help fight some of the stigma, because they're seeing themselves in the content. You can focus on real people and researchers in your field, and you can celebrate those researchers all across the diversity board, whether it's race, ethnicity, like all those buzzwords, you know. Yeah. And you can just make sure your students are comfortable enough to maybe talk about it. Maybe they don't even know that they have this like image, like, oh, I wish I looked like that. Maybe it hasn't clicked that, oh, maybe I should just be myself.
Yeah, social media wasn't even a thing for me until like high school, right? And honestly, I think that's good. Like,
Yeah.
I think I had a good time with that, because it's like the lack of something was actually better than having something. And I was like, oh, I was able to like focus on just literally anything else, right?
Experiencing life outside of a screen.
Experiencing real life, yeah, with real people, and like going outside and hanging out, instead of just like looking at my phone 24/7 nonstop. And I think now kids growing up is really difficult to avoid, right? Like even if you don't have that much money, I think somehow you can still get your hands on a cell phone.
Yeah.
Right. And like that culture is just really difficult. Like how do you teach your kids? How do you teach any kid to be like, okay, you need to step away. You need to like know when to step away. Like you need to do something else. Like it's just this is time to stop now.
I do remember in middle school they would have like little computer programs that you would go through of how to use technology responsibly, and I think it was an interesting concept, I guess, of this girl. It was like gave a scenario. It was like a play-by-play tech or program where the girl was like texting somebody and he turned out to be a stalker and like kidnapped her or something. And it's like, this is how you don't use it responsibly. But like it was like a puzzle. I think you were either trying to find her or you were her. It was a pretty out there example. Not really. I mean, it happens. But it's like you're showing this to little like 6th grade me. I'm like, oh my gosh, phones are so awful. They're so dangerous. And you see all the shows. I forget what like the actual names are of the adults who are pretending to be kids who kind of, I guess, like bait out the predators and they like film the predators and like catch them or whatever, because they're like, oh, you're supposed to be here to meet a 13-year-old girl, we're gonna film you. And it's just, I think maybe I learned more from those shows than I did in school, than just like, oh, don't get kidnapped. But that's one of the things I think that my school did to kind of teach that digital responsibility. And that was before I even had a phone. I didn't get Instagram till I was a freshman in high school. And I had been asking my mom, can I please get a phone where I can have Instagram, for like all of middle school? And no, she just gave me like a phone. It had minutes, like you use the minutes to text our friends. And the internet barely worked on it.
Do you think that was helpful for you?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it might have made it a little harder to like stay connected with people, but I think I still like is just like liking a post 2 years since you've seen the person, is that really staying connected? Now, like, this is the thinking I'm going through now, is like, well, I think it was fine that I didn't have a phone, but oh yeah, I was mad back then.
Like at the time,
because like, you feel left out, because you're like, oh my gosh, everyone has Instagram. It's kind of like that FOMO, like, oh, everybody has this and I can't have this, and it's all my mom's fault.
Yeah, but now you sort of realize like it's good for you.
And she waited until we were old enough to kind of understand the dangers of like having a phone is not all sunshine and flowers.
Yeah, that's fair. And especially like you were in middle school or high school, right, when you finally got that like social media account there. But these kids are starting now. Yeah, like out the womb, right?
Yeah. the little iPad kids can't eat without their iPad going.
Yeah.
Which I'm not much different. I like to watch my Netflix show while I'm eating. It is what it is.
Yeah. So there's like a lot of philosophy on how to do this, and some of them can seem harsh, right? Like if you felt it in middle school and high school that you were like feeling a lot of FOMO, like what do you think if somebody did that now. Like,
oh,
if some
it would be awful. Like, it would be intense, I'm sure, because now it's so widely available. Like, we went from like in my generation when I was in middle school, it was the slide phone to iPhone switch. That was, so it's like if you had a slide phone or like a one that still had the buttons for the letters, and you were like semi cool. And if you had the iPhone, it was super cool. But I had no phone, so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't fit in. Like I'm not even on their level.
You're like a cave woman.
Oh yeah. So it was that switch that just like, I was at first generation. I think it was like the iPhone 4 or something just came out. But it was an experience. But I guess I'm glad that I waited. But it was sometimes annoying because teachers would be trying to say like, oh, take out your phone and do this. And that was when I think I convinced my mom to get like not track phone. Because I was like, I need this for my social studies project.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to be using the internet, and I don't have the internet, Mom.
So how do you get them a phone that works and has all the utilities, but not too much, where they start having, anxiety or something, right?
Yeah, but I think I was old enough to kind of understand. When if you're in like 4th grade, it's like, I only got 2 likes, and maybe you're like super sad about that because it's like you're in 4th grade. I don't know. And I don't know. I don't teach elementary, so I don't interact with them too much anymore. But I know my middle schoolers will come up to me and be like, can I show you my TikTok dance? It's like, are you old enough to have TikTok?
Likes are crazy. Likes and views. Again, it's like, what are you doing this for? It's like, are you doing this for likes and views, or are you doing this because you genuinely find this fun?
Yeah. I don't know. It varies. I had one friend who was like, I want to become like YouTube famous. I want to become TikTok famous. And she kept at it for years, and she kind of is a little TikTok famous now. So it's like, I think she likes just doing it. But she's not feeling like she's an awful person or like anything when her views are down. She's like, because she's doing it for fun.
Yeah.
But she is very determined to become famous.
I think it's interesting because it's like if you're playing basketball in the park and you're having fun, okay, maybe you can have longevity in that. But if you're playing basketball in the park and you're getting burned out from playing basketball in the park because you have to make every single shot, right? And you feel that you're letting yourself down, you're not doing well enough, you're imperfect, so many people are better than you, like, well, maybe basketball is not the right route for you.
Yeah.
And so it's like same thing. It's like if you're doing anything, it's like if you're doing social media because you think it's fun and it's enjoyable and it helps you learn and it makes you a better person, maybe you'll have longevity in that. But if you're doing social media because like I need the money and like I need the likes, right?
Then it will just end when those things stop.
Yeah.
Or it's like, oh, I haven't been making money, so I'm just going to stop. It's not worth it. Or, oh, I haven't been getting likes and I'm feeling super down about it, so it's not worth it. But having like an actual passion, an actual like, having fun, yeah, that would help.
Yeah.
And I will never be the person to tell my student I already have students say, I'm going to be in the NFL, I'm going to go in the NHL. I will never be like, well, you know how many, like only 1% of people make it into the NHL or whatever. I'm not going to be that teacher. I'll be like, okay, well, I will try and connect biology to that.
Yeah, because there's no point. There's no point in telling somebody that you can't do something. Like,
it's like, okay, let me know if I can get free tickets.
yeah. It's like, yeah. How do you know? First of all, how do you know if somebody can or can't do something?
Maybe they can.
Second of all, it's like, it's not helpful. even if you are right.
Then the student just won't like you. They'll be like, oh, she doesn't like me. She said I'm not going to make it.
Yeah.
And honestly, you can use it as a tool. I had one kid, he said, I like basketball. And so I was teaching him how to do division. I was like, okay, I'll draw a basketball court, divide this into this many numbers. And he was like, oh, okay. And that was the most engaged I ever saw him.
It's because you like try and you like care and you try to make it applicable for somebody
Yep.
in their specific scenario. And I think that's very interesting. Like when we go down this route here, like how do you teach kids with different like learning styles?
You try to incorporate a lot of different ones. A big thing is student choice. You can have one project and have a few different ways how to do it. And students can choose which way that they want to do it. And then hopefully that will make them more motivated because they chose it. So even though it might, honestly, maybe it's less work for me. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. It depends on what the project is. Once you have the different choices set up, that's probably the biggest time consumer. But you will probably get less questions. You'll probably get less late assignments if they choose something that they understand, they know, it's on their level. Or they want to pick a more challenging one. And that's great because even though if they might have more questions or anything, maybe it will get them more involved. Maybe they wanted that challenge. And if they don't and they decide they don't want to do it, just be like, well, what other project do you want to do?
It's so difficult because like everybody's different. Everybody's so different. And it's like, you know, what fits one kid might not fit another kid. And if another kid's going through something very difficult at home,
then maybe they pick the easier assignment.
Right.
And then that helps them stay engaged in the class. And that's up to them.
Yeah. And so you can't just say there's a one size fits all type curriculum like we were trying to feed people in the past, right? It's like everybody's different and everybody's goals are different and what they want to accomplish are different. And maybe, and I understand you are just one person, one teacher, and there's no way to cater to everybody. And that's, you know, impossible. That would make you super inefficient, right? But, you know, the awareness and the awareness to know that people are different and that you can sort of switch and help somebody out in the way that they like to learn, in the way that they feel connected learning. I think that's very powerful.
And it's always important also to try to get students engaged in things that maybe they don't know so well. So as much as it's like good to stay in your comfort zone, you can also learn a lot from moving outside of your comfort zone. Yeah. So they, again, have a little balance. Education is all about the balance.
Yeah. But the idea of trying to like make everybody into a steel worker and like, you know, an assembly line, like that's not what we're doing
anymore. Not everybody is going to be interested in that.
That's not what we're doing anymore.
Yeah.
And like we've moved beyond that, right? And there's so much like, you know, with AI coming out.
There's going to be so many jobs that you don't even know what they are. So you just have to give them the tools to be independent learners, and they can learn on their own and study anything they want with the tools that you give them.
We're creating jobs in real time. And I think that's the difficult component of today, is that like maybe in the past there was something to strive to, and once you reach it, then you know you're set. You know you're set for the next 40 years and you're going to retire here and you're going to have, you know, a nice family here, and then you're going to, this is where you're going to settle.
American dream.
Right. But today it's like, no, like you need to get up. You need to move every 3 years or so, or like a couple of years, and you're doing something else. Right. And like we talked about earlier, like with respect to AI, it's like that moves the needle even faster. Like AI in the classroom, again, like this is just a new tool. Like we've had tools in the past that was, you know, life-changing, perspective-changing. Like having Google, having cell phones. With AI now, you essentially have this disposable partner at your side, and that you get to ask questions, and they give you answers, and they give you follow-up questions. They do work for you. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think there are positive impacts, and also like, are there negative impacts to AI in the classroom?
There's definitely both. Again, it's a digital tool that you can use and incorporate into your classroom, but there are going to be ways where students will try to use it to get out of learning it themselves. just ask it the homework question and it'll give an answer. You can plug in a math equation and it'll solve it. There's already programs for that. There have been for years. But you could also use it to your advantage. I use like the little Snapchat AI for my ask me a cellular biology trivia question, and I'll quiz myself for my teaching certification test. And that's really helpful for me. Or if I can say, give me a college level explanation of DNA transcription, and it will give you all the enzymes, all the steps, all the names for things. And of course you double check it because it's not perfect. But it's better than sometimes just going through my old notes and trying to find exactly where I put that.
And so is cheating like a big factor with AI for you that you've seen?
So especially in English classrooms where people are having the AIs write their essays for them, that's a big thing right now. They're just starting conferences and things to talk about this, how to like identify AI written papers. Like sometimes it's obvious. It will change, especially with writing essays about books. It might change a character name into an actual definition. Like let's say your character is named, or you're talking about The Rock, it might change it to like a metamorphic something or other.
And how do you catch it? How do you catch
sometimes it just doesn't make sense. They don't even proofread. Or in some cases, my professors have talked about how it will have a little note at the bottom that says written by this AI, and the student just doesn't read it. And they'll just feel like, oh, I need to get it done. And they turn it in and they don't see it's actually telling the professor that it was written by an AI.
That's smart. Like having like a watermark.
Yeah, that would be a perfect world. But you do get to know your student writing. Let's say you have them write out like a journal or two in class. Yeah. Then you have a comparison to their writing style, what words they use, what vocabulary level they're at, and you can compare it to any written, like typed out papers that you like set as homework. And then you have that comparison. So that's one way.
That must be so much more work on your end now.
You have to know your students.
Yeah. It's like, what is this them? Like, are they that smart? Or
did they get smarter? Did they learn new vocabulary? Yeah. Did they use a dictionary?
Yeah. Or is it clearly AI?
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll find out, I guess.
There's a lot of room for improvements on both sides, for the students and the teacher. There's also a lot more work on both sides. You can ask more intricate questions. They can give you more intricate answers. With AI, though, do you think standardized tests should still, be a thing?
Standardized testing is a big back and forth issue, regardless of AI. Okay. Whether people think it's more for faculty, more or like funding instead of actually student-led things or student-based learning. You could talk about that for a long time. Yeah. And there really is no final decision, because you do need a way to evaluate how a school is doing, but is standardized testing the way that you want to do it? And is it benefiting the students, or are students just doing something for the school that's not really benefiting them? So you could go back and forth on that for a long time.
Yeah, because again, I look at standardized tests as like trying to fit a bunch of random shapes into one mold type situation, because it's like you have this very generalized test, and that part of it I would argue is irrelevant a lot of it is irrelevant, but you still have this because you want to create some sort of like knowledge on somebody's base foundation of what they know.
Mm-hmm.
But is it actually applicable to real life, right? Like, I don't think so. Like, your life is not an ACT test. Life is not an SAT test, right?
Yeah, so it is a way to find out like base learning, but it can also cause a lot of teachers to just teach for the test, and that can lead to either rushing through material, not spending enough time on topics that you think would be more relevant to your students. But it's just, it is what it is sometimes. It will take a lot to take out standardized testing. A lot of teachers don't like it, and
Teachers don't like having standardized tests, or teachers like having standardized tests?
they usually don't like standardized
like it,
testing
okay.
because I think there's a lot more efficient ways of evaluating students other than standardized testing.
Mm-hmm.
A standardized test has to be very well written. There can be no like ambiguity, but a lot of times there can be, or there is.
Mm-hmm.
And then did the student just read the question wrong, or did they really not know the answer? When you have project-based evaluation instead of standardized testing based, you can figure that out much easier because it's very much more detailed on what the student has learned than just filling in a multiple choice or filling in a little short answer. You can learn a lot more about what the student understands and what they don't understand from other methods of testing.
Yeah, because I think there's a portfolio approach. And the portfolio approach is somebody just showing you their work, what they've accomplished, what they've done. And I think that's pretty versatile, because then you show the correct intended audience what it is that you've been working on, whether it's, art or writing or engineering projects or what you have it, but it's just like something that's more targeted. So like you can create a website, you can create some sort of like, written portfolio or something, some work that you've accomplished, and you can show an employer like, this was an experience I tried to embark on. These are some of the projects that I've worked on, and essentially showing experience rather than like,
Test scores.
I did good on this English test. Right.
So that is like a product-based classroom, something you can take out of the classroom and use it beyond. Like if you wrote a resume, you can use that and turn it into an actual job. You can turn that into your job. Say it's an English classroom and you do like practice resume writing, then you can take that beyond the classroom. If you just gave them a little like 10-question quiz of what should you include on a resume, that's sometimes a difference. On like a probably not well written test, if it's just like, what elements should be in it, you can make them a lot more detailed and a lot more like inquisitive, but many teachers don't have the time to do that, or like they feel like they don't have the time, or they're just teaching for the test. If you get this question asked on like the English portion of the SAT, can you pick out the right answer? That's the difference sometimes between just standardized testing and teaching for the test versus product-based, take it beyond the classroom learning.
And I think, universities are recognizing that now. It's really just one component. That's all it is. It's one component of the student. And the student encompasses so many components because they are a real human being, right? And they have so much more than just the pure standardized testing part of them. They have, their GPAs, of course, and they have their extracurricular activities. But then you look past all of that and it's just you. You as a human. Like, what are you like? What is your personality like? Right? Like,
and
are you...
They say like, that's why you have like the college essays and things like that, so you can get to know your students when you're like applying for colleges. And those essays should be something that can be like worked over in an English classroom. That I feel like that would be important, being able to express yourself through an essay, what your beliefs are, who you are, instead of just giving a little multiple choice test.
Yeah.
Whew, that was hard to get out.
Yeah, and so I hope colleges realize that, and that they take these, number-based components not so seriously, and that they have to look at the person as a whole, and what are they interested in? Why are they interested in it? Does it spark something really like innovative within them? And maybe that matters more than what their test score says.
Yeah.
Just like, if you want to work with somebody, it would be nice to have similar interests and sort of have, similar backgrounds, like conversations, like good conversations between you two, instead, and making yourselves viable to work together and cooperate and actually get something done, rather than just like, oh, what was your science score on your ACT? Okay, you did good. Okay, now I can work with you.
Yeah.
Like, no, that means nothing. That means like you can come on board and potentially I can find out that you're just like a real jerk and you're a horrible person. Like you test really well, but you're just like in it for the money or something, or like
kind of knowing the motivation, if they have motivation, like what's going on in there.
Yeah.
That's what's important too.
Yeah. Of course.
You are not your test score.
You're more than your test score.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So for you now, what subject, if you could teach like a grade, like what grade would you teach?
So at least for biology, since I didn't do an integrated science degree where you can kind of teach all the sciences, I am limited to biology and chemistry. So that would usually be, biology would be freshman, sophomore. Chemistry is usually sophomore, junior. But I would like to teach older.
So sophomore, junior, high school, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha. But you want to teach older, like in
I
college? Older?
I think I could see myself doing that. I would have to get another degree, but I could see myself doing that. But I do like, I would say junior, senior ages would be my favorite. I think that's what I would like to work with. But I think I could deal with the younger than that, because I do like my middle schoolers that I substitute teach for. They grew on me.
So it seems like you want more of like a high school setting, and sort of your route is.
But I've had more experience in middle school so far.
Okay. So either one really is fine. Okay. Well, I think that that wraps it up for me here. That's I mean, is there anything that I haven't covered that you want to talk about? Because I know I've been asking all the questions here.
I think we've covered everything that I was thinking we were going to cover. Sure. I think we've covered a lot of stuff that is really important to a lot of educators, that can be talked about by everybody that either has kids, wants kids, has nieces, nephews, is a teacher. I think this would be a good thing for other people to listen to. Yeah,
and I think sort of listening to your experience that's there, like, I think there's a multitude of backgrounds that teachers come from, and yours happen to sort of be biology and science, but, teachers obviously teach many subjects, a variety of subjects. So if somebody wanted to be a teacher, right, they can feel free to come from a variety of backgrounds, instead of just, being very one pigeon-held type path. Yeah.
And I mean, in my experience, my favorite teacher, you had talked about your cross-country math coach, and you have an engineering degree. And my favorite teacher was my biology and zoology teacher. And that just ended up being what I was interested in. So I think that just kind of shows how big of a difference that a teacher can make, whether they're very engaged or very like bringing new things to the classroom, making their content interesting. It can be very inspiring for a lot of different students.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you here, and I hope you have a fun time in Boulder.
I did. It was really fun. I'm sad to be going back tomorrow.
Awesome.
Thanks
Cool.
for having me.
Yeah.